I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Welcome back, Secretary Yellen. Welcome back, Chair Powell. Chair Powell, congratulations on your renomination as Fed Chair. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have spent a tremendous amount of time attacking the Build Back Better Act as wasteful spending that will increase the deficit and fuel inflation, as we've seen through this conversation. I, of course, disagree with that. Not only is this legislation paid for, but it makes critical long-term overdue investments that will improve productivity and address the supply chain bottlenecks causing part of the cause of heightened inflation. The Build Back Better Act critically makes investments close to more than $7 trillion projected 10-year tax gap that is largely due to tax evasion by the wealthy and by corporations. You know, I'm reminded of the quote by Benjamin Franklin, there are only two things certain, death and taxes. However, we know from reality, Secretary Yellen, you've spoken about this, that taxes are not certain for everybody, and it's time we made a fair, equal playing field. So rather than the boogeyman of 87,000 agents coming after hardworking Americans, could we be clearer? What are the ways that wealthy individuals and corporations fail to pay taxes? In some cases, it's not everybody, we know that. How do some avoid or fail to pay taxes? And that's what we're trying to go after.
Well, the rates of compliance for income streams that have third-party reporting to the IRS, like wages and salaries, 95, 97, 98, something like that percentage of income is reported and taxes are paid as due.
Can you
so
paint
that's
a picture?
Not where the problem is.
Yeah.
The problem is opaque sources of income. When individuals earn income that isn't wage and salary income, the IRS doesn't know about it, they have to rely on the honesty of the taxpayer to report what they've earned. They don't have additional sources of information. And for complex partnerships and for companies, similarly, the sources of income and amounts are opaque. And if we had high auditing rates, that would probably promote more honest reporting. But audit rates have dropped to unbelievably low levels over the last decade. And so the investment in the IRS to enhance its auditing capacity, not only will that directly enable greater tax collections, but a lot of research shows that it will improve honesty in reporting in the first place when the odds of being audited rise.
And that would be valuable because, as Treasury has estimated, the tax gap could be as high as $7 trillion over the next decade, in the future decade. How that much money is currently falling through the cracks, and we here in Congress wouldn't want to address that, is staggering to me. Chair Powell, in the remaining time that I have, you know, when you appeared before this committee in July, I asked you about the need for greater public and private investment. You talked about how investment raises the potential growth rate, increasing productivity, and raising living standards. I also asked you about the impact of supply chain vulnerabilities on inflation, which you repeatedly testified to be one of the major drivers of inflation. As part of the Build Back Better Act, I worked to include a language to increase our investment in domestic manufacturing and support supply chain resiliency. Ultimately, this legislation took the form of authorizing $500 million for the use of the Defense Production Act for the purposes of supporting manufacturing right here. Chair Powell, how would this kind of domestic investment in manufacturing address continued supply chain challenges and combat inflation?
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to decline. I don't want to get into commenting on particular aspects of this specific bill. It's just not our role. It's not that we don't have the capability to do it. It's just we really have to respect that we're not part of fiscal policy. We do our jobs. I respect that.
How about the fact if we can encourage and create greater domestic manufacturing, not speaking of the legislation then, what would that do in terms of inflation?
Well, a significant part of the inflation that we're seeing is due to longer length supply chains from Asia. So to the extent, I mean, as a factual matter, if you made things locally here in this particular situation, you'd see lower inflation. But by the time
Thank you, and I
this
have
will
to
be past
gavel
this.
myself off because my time has expired. Thank you, Chair Powell. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions.